Hey. How hot do I look right now?
Pretty hot. How'd you fix it?
It was a loose connection. Antenna. They found our mess at the school.
Good.
This guy, Owen, he went AWOL.
Maybe Tommy got to him.
Maybe.
What about her?
Nothing yet.
Unit Romeo, you are requested at Site 2. Repeat, you are requested at Site 2. Confirmed.
So, the numbers are locations. The TV station we were at, that's 6. There's a lot of chatter coming out of 2, so I'm assuming that's their home base. That helps.
Look. Last night was... stupid.
Casualties reported in 14. All available units report. Over. This is Site 13. Unit Lima nearby. How many scars you got? Over. Negative on scars. Lone male trespasser. Armed.
Lone male
Over.
trespasser?
Tommy. Where's 14?
Not 100% sure.
Okay, then guess.
If this is 7, 12's all the way over here. I guess it's somewhere in this neighborhood?
Hillcrest. Okay. I'll go get him.
Give me your hand. It's for good luck.
I don't believe in luck.
I do.
Is this the right place? Definitely the right place.
Welcome back to my series where I analyze scenes, characters, and other aspects of The Last of Us Part 2 in order to deepen our understanding of this story, as well as certain facets of storytelling in general. Today I'm going to be analyzing the Hillcrest chapter of the game, which begins at the start of Ellie's second day in Seattle. Hillcrest, a fictional neighborhood in the northeast of Seattle, is the setting for the first mission that Ellie embarks on alone. It's also the first solo mission that the player gets with Ellie in the game. There's a lot packed into this chapter, both from a narrative and gameplay standpoint. Ellie will learn more about the various factions populating the area and the tragedy that befell the Hillcrest neighborhood following the outbreak. She'll also receive a new weapon, encounter a new enemy archetype, and fight her way through multiple squadrons of WLF, all while in hot pursuit of the lone male trespasser she believes is Tommy. Of course, by the time she catches up to him, she will be just as shocked as we are to learn that it's not Tommy, but Joel.
What the hell are you doing here?
You think I'd let you do this on your own?
Wait, did I say Joel? I meant Jesse.
What the hell are you doing here?
I think I'd let you do this on your own.
That was weird. Must have been the new PC port. Anyway, as we go through this chapter, we'll also highlight some foils for Ellie's arc, as well as thematic ties for the series as a whole. But before we get into that, as always, we'll need to start with a bit of context. By the time Ellie sets off towards Hillcrest, a lot has just happened, both diegetically for Ellie herself and in the player's experience of the game. For Ellie, she's just woken up from what was probably a pretty crappy night's sleep. The previous night, she and Dina had their first argument, and though they were able to essentially kiss and make up, Ellie's trust in her has been significantly shaken. It also doesn't change the fact that Dina is pregnant and too sick to carry on with the mission. What the fuck, Dina? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me? But did you trust her? Now, Ellie has set off alone into a strange city with only a vague sense of where Tommy might be, knowing that Dina's condition means she is running out of time to secure her revenge. Oh, and, she's still grieving Joel and parsing out all the complicated feelings she has about him and his death. For the player, we've just finished the first flashback sequence of the game and are stepping back into the present day for day 2. The birthday gift chapter reunited us with Joel for the first time since the golf tournament, got us well and truly in our feels, and then left us once again with the bitter taste of unfinished business and unsaid truths. Now, we're hoping to finally reunite with Tommy, whom we've spent the better part of the previous day chasing after.
It's too late to turn back. Just gotta end this thing as quickly as possible.
Upon arriving in Hillcrest, Ellie finds herself in a small strip center featuring a clothing store, a laundromat, and a couple other abandoned businesses. While exploring the laundromat, Ellie finds a WLF flyer seeking recruits to fight against Fedra. The same flyer can be found in the pet store in the downtown area, so this gives us a vague idea of the timeline for what occurred up here.
What is that?
WLF propaganda.
Hillcrest appears to also be frozen in time shortly after the WLF overturned Fedra and began seizing control of surrounding neighborhoods. Evidently, the Seraphites didn't make it to this part of the city and still haven't. There's no visual indications or even mentions of their presence in this chapter. Across the street, the basement of the clothing store once served as a hideout for an archer named Boris Legasov. This is one of the first hints we will get that a bow weapon may finally be on the horizon for Ellie. Boris is one of the main characters in the Hillcrest saga. Pre-Outbreak, he was already known for his archery skills, but it seems his abilities were particularly useful once clickers came on the scene. But even beyond his archery prowess, he appears to have been a capable survivor. His hideout is clean and organized, complete with a workbench and a method for collecting rainwater. He led the neighborhood through the outbreak and in resisting Fedra's tyranny, and was also a father to a talented artist named Sophia.
It's pretty good.
Happy birthday, kiddo.
You like it?
There's too many of these assholes.
Ellie begins following the sound of gunfire and explosions, figuring that if the WLF is actively hunting Tommy, he's likely to be at the center of the action. But the further she wanders into Hillcrest, the more it resembles the downtown area, only now it's WLF property and ordinances being vandalized instead of the military's.
Let's find a way past this, fuck Fedra gate. Fuck these wolves.
Fuck these scars. Fuck Seattle.
In a rare and used bookstore, Ellie finds a note addressed to Boris from Yolanda, a former Fedra officer who had been stationed in Hillcrest while the military was still in power. Once Fedra fell, any soldiers who didn't join up with the WLF were systematically hunted down and executed.
Fedra soldiers. They were executed.
Jesus. They weren't just executed. They shot them to pieces.
Though evidently Boris and Yolanda had gotten along well, likely working closely together during Fedra's occupation of Hillcrest, the WLF clearly didn't give former soldiers the benefit of the doubt. Yolanda opted to flee the city rather than join the WLF or die resisting. A couple shops over, Ellie finds a note from Uli, a friend of Boris's who supported the WLF against Fedra, thinking things would be better under their rule, only to realize pretty quickly that the wolves had become their enemy. We also learn in this note that once the WLF had established full control of Seattle and its surrounding neighborhoods, they'd pushed for residents to relocate permanently to their home base at the stadium. One could say this was for safety or to save on resources, but more likely it was to have better control over their people. Once their constituents depended on them for everything, lived and breathed the Washington Liberation Front every minute of every day, they'd become entrenched in the WLF ideology and way of life.
This is dumb. We should be pushing in.
We hold the perimeter until we hear otherwise. Keep an eye out in case he comes this way.
I got something.
Shit. Infected?
Let's get in there.
The first combat encounter introduces us to a new enemy archetype, the WLF's dogs. Dogs were teased the previous day at the school, but Ellie and Dina just managed to avoid them. Now, Ellie's scent trail puts pressure on the player to move quickly through an area teeming with soldiers. This also, of course, plays on the player's emotions. If they haven't already felt some type of way about the WLF soldiers calling out for their dead friends by name, I think it's safe to say players universally feel pretty awful about having to harm dogs. Next, we have the only navigation puzzle in the chapter. Similar to how dogs were teased on the previous day, this puzzle teases another rolling dumpster-related puzzle that shows up later on. Ellie then drops into a bicycle shop where she finds a trading card collectible for Naledi the Youthful. As the lone survivor of an arson attack that killed her entire family, Naledi's grief became a dark spirit which imbued her with invulnerability, so long as she was touching another living being. She teamed up with someone with the strength to carry her into battle, the two of them unstoppable so long as they stayed together. There's obviously a lot of parallels between Naledi's story and Ellie's, grief and survivor's guilt, worn like a dark shroud, but it also offers a glimmer of hope. The second she loses her grip on another living being, once she's alone, she is vulnerable and exposed, and withdraws further into her grief to compensate. So long as Ellie maintains connection with someone who has the strength to support her, she's untouchable.
Only when weak may I carry my true strength.
Naledi's story could also foreshadow Abby and Lev's, Lev being the sole survivor of his family who teams up with someone strong who won't let any harm befall him. Elsewhere in the bike shop, Ellie finds another letter to Boris from Uli. Now, imagine if Tommy had been riling up Jackson and leading a rebellion against a dangerous enemy faction, found out Ellie was openly vandalizing the enemy's property with antagonistic messaging, didn't tell Joel about it, and then Ellie was caught and publicly executed for it. Now imagine if Tommy had then given up on vengeance, told Joel, "We gotta be smart about this," and begged him to be a dependable leader in the face of what has just happened. Now imagine Joel finding out about all of this in a note from Tommy. I think there would be one fewer Miller brother named Tommy left on this earth, right?
Jesus, boy!
Well, that's essentially what Boris went through after his daughter Sophia was shot by the WLF for tagging their shit. Sophia Legasov was the first casualty of Hillcrest's conflict with the wolves, the sacrificial lamb whose death sparked the rest of the neighborhood to reconsider what they were willing to risk in the face of the WLF's ruthlessness. One by one, Boris's neighbors gave up the fight, either out of concern for their own children, to seek medical attention, or eventually out of sheer spite for Boris himself. Despite all their talk of resistance, ultimately Hillcrest residents were unwilling to risk everything now that the wolves had shown their teeth.
Abby, I want what you want, but not at any cost.
Emerging into another small commercial area, Ellie finds an old taxi T-boning a military truck with WLF branding. The truck is covered in bullet holes, soot from a localized fire, probably a Molotov cocktail, and yellow graffiti. We'll learn after reading a note in the adjacent pet store that Boris was responsible for the violence outside, and that his actions had been the final straw for a few of his neighbors who were already concerned that his thirst for vengeance would be their undoing. This note was written anonymously, but it was addressed to Uli. Before leaving this area, Ellie finds another note with a safe combination on it. If the player hasn't already found the safe location, they will know now to look for one in a garage.
Fuck was that? Looks like they've been locked in here for years.
That was weird, but that won't come up later. Heading up the stairs, Ellie comes across a recently exploded house crawling with infected drawn by the noise.
Oh, shit. Hope you did that, Tommy.
She then drops into the backyard of an abandoned house, quiet apart from the occasional creak and the buzz of flies. A note left on the coffee table is the only piece of correspondence the player will find from Boris himself, addressed to Yolanda if she ever returned to Hillcrest. Reeling from the loss of his daughter and the cowardly inaction of his friends and neighbors, Boris had single-handedly unleashed guerrilla warfare on the WLF, crashing into and gunning down a squad of wolves against their truck. Then, taking a page out of Sophia's book, Boris spray-painted a taunting message at the scene and fled uphill. At some point, Boris uncovered his neighbor's plan to turn him over to the WLF in order to save themselves from the wolves' wrath. He had then poisoned each of them, just enough to render them unconscious, before locking them into a spored garage, forcing his friends and neighbors to watch each other turn over time. But Uli had woken up and bitten him during the struggle. Boris had written this letter to Yolanda before turning himself, resolutely declaring his neighbors deserved their fate for betraying him and denying him his revenge. Ellie then comes face to face with Boris in stalker form, and from him she finally gets her iconic bow weapon. She'll definitely need it for the next sequence, which is arguably one of the hardest combat challenges of the game. Now, obviously, once we start talking about a character seeking revenge, we draw parallels to Ellie. Like Boris, Ellie will become a one-woman army capable of unspeakable violence in the name of justice, and she also harbors resentment for those who contest her goal. And though she doesn't poison anyone who gets in her way, she does kill a fair few of them, and sometimes weaponizes the CBI in order to do so, just as Boris had done. But Ellie's later journal entries will recount her feeling like she herself is a poison that has the potential to make her loved ones sick just by being around her. Like Boris, Ellie's self-destructive pursuit of vengeance will eventually push everyone she cares about away, and she will likewise feel let down or untrusting of those closest to her. Her need to rid herself of her burden will outweigh any sense of self-preservation she has. All that will remain is an obsessive desire to inflict suffering on those who'd caused her all this pain. I think likewise, Boris's situation can also mirror Abby's and possibly foreshadows some of the group dynamics to come in the latter half of the game. Like Sophia's death had done for Boris and Hillcrest, Jerry's death drove a wedge between Abby and her friends. She withdrew, became obsessed with revenge, and felt resentful towards those in the group who doubted her. Like Uli, Owen tried to be the voice of reason, seeing a bigger picture than Abby was ever able to see. But unlike Uli, Owen never turned his back on her. Like the anonymous defector, Mel eventually believed Abby was too far gone and was ultimately willing to give her up to protect herself and her family. And though Abby didn't drug and lock her friends into a spored garage like Boris, every single one of them died as a result of her revenge. When Ellie leaves Boris's house with his bow, she begins a rampage through the Hillcrest suburb, tearing through squad after squad of WLF as they pursue the elusive lone male trespasser in tandem. Ellie's attacks and gameplay lines become fiercer. Her rage and adrenaline are reflected in the pulsing, driving soundtrack. She becomes Boris, the lone archer on an unstoppable mission to avenge the one she lost. The WLF are the perfect outlet for her rage, especially now that she is alone to let it out without freaking out her companion. That is, until... Unexpectedly reunited with Joel. Jesse. God, gotta stop doing that. Unexpectedly reunited with Jesse, Ellie realizes he is in fact the lone male trespasser she's been following all morning, not Tommy. I think this throws Ellie off for a couple of reasons, namely because she knows Jesse will insist on bringing Dina home to Jackson as soon as he discovers her condition, but also because she probably assumes he isn't on the same mission as Ellie and Tommy are. She might think Jesse came after them to make sure everyone was safe, or maybe even to stop them from getting their revenge at all. To Ellie, Jesse is probably another obstacle standing in her way, even if she tries to tell herself that she is genuinely happy to see him. The final set piece of this chapter sees Ellie and Jesse fleeing from wolves and infected alike in a stolen WLF truck, careening through the friendly neighborhood turned war-torn wasteland that was Hillcrest. Jesse's here. This is good. He can help protect Dina. It felt good having him around to deal with the WLF. Maybe he can help us find these people more quickly. I don't want to hear anything about turning back.
Fuck is that?
In the Ground Zero level, Abby unleashes a monstrous amalgamation of infected from the trauma unit in the Seattle hospital as a metaphorical representation of her releasing and facing her inner demons in order to move forward and heal. In Hillcrest, Ellie encounters the story of a man who locked a bunch of infected away in a garage, possibly symbolizing Ellie's emotional repression as she withdraws further into herself. The Hillcrest chapter serves as a microcosm of many of the game's core themes, including grief, cycles of violence, and tribalism. Hillcrest, like WLF and Jackson and every other faction we encounter in this series, is itself a tribe, but within that tribe there are smaller groups, and within those there are more groups, and so on. Boris and Sophia, like Ellie and Joel, were a tribe within a tribe. Ellie may recognize herself in Boris, but she may also recognize Joel there too, and projecting her pain and grief onto a man who lost his daughter likely hits a little too close to home for Ellie, who hardly needs another reason to hate the WLF. She becomes the Legasov's Avenger, inadvertently securing the retribution that Boris couldn't due to traitorous allies and, as always, the infection. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate your patience and your support. I hope you'll check out my reactions to Season 2 of The Last of Us. I'll be posting those weekly here on the channel. And I have plans for a series of analysis videos. I honestly have no idea how long that will take me, but I'll be working on it, and I also have ideas for other smaller ones in the meantime. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much again for tuning in. I think that's it. Thanks again, and until next time, endure and survive.